Alex, imagine this. You're engaged to someone, completely smitten, and then one day, poof, they vanish into thin air. No trace, no explanation, nothing.
That sounds like a nightmare. Are we talking about another one of Holmes's cases?
Exactly. This time, it's a young woman named Mary Sutherland. She walks into 201B Baker Street, clearly distressed, and lays out the most bizarre mystery.
Let me guess, her fiancé disappeared?
Not just disappeared, Alex. Vanished in a way that doesn't make sense. The guy was supposed to meet her at the church for their wedding, but he never showed up.
That's brutal. Did he run away? Cold feet?
That's what makes it interesting. Mary is convinced that's not possible. She describes her fiancé, Hosmer Angel, as the most devoted, loving man. And he made her promise something strange before the wedding day.
Strange how?
He told her, "No matter what happens, you must remain faithful to me."
That's unsettling. Like he knew something was going to happen.
Exactly. Holmes listens to all this and immediately starts picking up on little details. Details Mary doesn't even realize are important.
Like what?
Like how she only ever saw Hosmer at certain times, how he always insisted on writing letters instead of speaking much in person, and most oddly, how he avoided being around her stepfather.
Now that's a red flag. Why avoid the stepfather?
That's what Holmes wants to find out. And trust me, the truth behind this disappearance, way stranger than you'd expect.
All right, Jordan, tell me this. Why would a young, decent-looking woman with a comfortable inheritance fall for a guy like Hosmer Angel? Something feels off already.
Exactly what Holmes thought. Let's look at Mary Sutherland first. She's 25, independent, and comes from a well-off family. Her father left her a nice sum of money, and she earns her own living typing. By all accounts, she's not desperate.
So she doesn't need a man to take care of her. But she still falls for someone unusual?
Very unusual. She lives with her mother and stepfather, Mr. Windybank. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Windybank controls her inheritance, saying it's better invested than spent.
Red flag. Anytime someone's money is better off in someone else's hands, it's trouble.
Right? He doesn't let her attend social events either. Claims it's improper for a young woman. So, Mary's stuck at home, isolated.
And conveniently not meeting any potential suitors.
Bingo, that's where Hosmer Angel steps in.
Mysteriously appearing just when she's at her most vulnerable? That's suspicious timing.
That's not even the strangest part. Their entire relationship is built on secrecy. They only meet when her stepfather is away, and Hosmer insists she never speak of him to anyone.
This guy's throwing up every red flag possible. A secret relationship, controlling behavior, and a conveniently missing stepfather. Holmes had to be all over this.
Oh, he was. And when he heard how Hosmer Angel disappeared, he knew something wasn't right.
Okay, now you have to tell me what exactly happened to this guy.
So, here's where it gets really strange. Mary tells Holmes that her romance with Hosmer Angel wasn't like any ordinary relationship. It was almost eerie.
Eerie how? Was he obsessive?
You could say that. He was desperate to prove his love to Mary. Every time they met, he talked endlessly about how much she meant to him, how she must remain faithful no matter what happens.
That sounds more like a warning than a declaration of love.
Exactly. And it didn't stop there. He was oddly protective of his identity too. He only met Mary when her stepfather was out of town, always at night. And get this, he never let her see where he lived.
What? So no home, no background, no nothing, and she didn't think that was weird?
She did, but love makes people blind, Alex. The only thing she had of him were letters, written in this peculiar slanted handwriting.
The more you talk, the more this guy sounds like a ghost, just appearing and disappearing in the shadows.
Oh, it gets better. When they finally decide to marry, Hosmer takes paranoia to the next level. He forces Mary to swear that no matter what happens, she will always love him and stay true.
Oh, come on. That's a clear setup for something crazy to happen.
You're absolutely right. The wedding day arrives. Mary, full of excitement, gets ready, and they all head to the church. Mary, her mother, and Hosmer Angel.
Hold on, her mother actually came along? She approved of this mystery man?
Surprisingly, yes. They get to the church. Everything seems fine. Hosmer walks ahead towards the altar. And then
What happened? Did he just walk out, or did something stop him?
he just vanishes.
Wait, what do you mean, vanishes?
I mean gone. Disappears into thin air. 1 second, he's there, walking toward the priest. The next, he's nowhere to be found.
No way. A man doesn't just evaporate on his own wedding day.
That's exactly what Mary thought. She was left standing there in her wedding dress, waiting for a groom who would never come.
And there was no sign of him? No last words, no goodbye, no explanation?
Nothing. He was there, and then he wasn't.
All right, this just turned into a full-blown mystery. What did Mary do next?
Well, after the shock wore off, she tried everything. She searched, she asked around, she even wrote letters to his address. But every attempt led to the same answer. Hosmer Angel no longer existed.
That's impossible. He had to exist somewhere.
That's why she turned to Sherlock Holmes. She wanted to know what happened to the man she loved, and more importantly, was he even real to begin with?
Okay, I need answers. What was Holmes's first move?
Mary sits across from Holmes, clutching her gloves, her voice trembling, as she tells him everything. Holmes listens, tapping his fingers against the armrest of his chair, his sharp eyes never leaving her face.
I can already tell. He's working through the puzzle in his mind, piecing things together before she even finishes.
Exactly. And once she's done, Holmes asks his first question. Simple, but telling. Do you have a photograph of Hosmer Angel?
Smart. A picture could be a game changer. Did she have one?
She shakes her head. No photographs, no letters, no real proof he even existed. Just the memories of their secret meetings and the letters he dictated, but never wrote himself.
He dictated letters? That's odd. Why wouldn't he write them himself?
That's exactly what Holmes finds strange. She explains that Hosmer always made her mother write them, saying his eyesight was weak, and every single letter was signed in an unusual, shaky hand.
That's weird. So no real evidence, no real identity. Just a man who came and went like a ghost.
Holmes thinks so too, but he doesn't show it. Instead, he calmly asks Mary a few more details. Her father's absence, her mother's remarriage, the stepfather's name.
I bet this is where it gets interesting. What does she say?
The stepfather's name is James Windybank, a cold, stiff man who never approved of her talking to other men, let alone marrying one. And he always had an excuse for why he couldn't take her out in public. Too busy, too tired, too much work.
That's suspicious, almost like he wanted to keep her isolated.
Holmes thinks so too. And when Mary leaves, he leans back in his chair and smirks. Watson, ever the eager assistant, asks if he already knows the answer. Holmes just nods and says, "It is quite an elementary case of deception."
Wait, Holmes already knows? Just like that?
You know how he is. He sees what others miss. But he doesn't reveal anything just yet. Instead, he asks Watson to help him send out a few telegrams.
Telegrams to who?
That's the best part. Holmes doesn't say. He just writes them quickly, seals them, and hands them off. Then he leans back in his chair and waits, completely at ease.
So, Watson's sitting there, probably as confused as I am right now.
Exactly. Watson even asks if Holmes could at least give him a hint, but Holmes just smiles and says, "All will be clear soon enough."
He loves the theatrics, doesn't he?
Oh, absolutely. And he's got a flair for making people sweat. But what's really interesting is what he does next. He arranges to meet Mary's mother and stepfather at Baker Street. She arrives first, anxious but hopeful. Then Windybank enters, looking as smug as ever.
Wait, why does Holmes want to meet her family? What is he trying to figure out?
That's exactly what Windybank is wondering too. He walks in, probably expecting a polite conversation, but Holmes doesn't waste time. He leans forward and says, "I believe I know what happened to Hosmer Angel."
And how does Windybank react to that?
The moment Holmes starts asking about Hosmer Angel, Windybank tries to laugh it off. He says Mary is being foolish, that she let her imagination get the best of her.
Dismissing it like it's nothing? That's suspicious.
Holmes thinks so too, but he keeps his cool and casually asks to see some of Windybank's handwriting.
Oh, I see where this is going.
"You're catching on." Windybank hesitates, but there's no good reason to refuse. So, he writes something down, and Holmes barely glances at it before folding it away.
He already knows.
He does, and when he gets back to Baker Street, there's a response waiting for him, a reply to one of his telegrams. He reads it, chuckles to himself, and turns to Watson. "Well, my dear fellow, the mystery is solved."
Just like that, no build-up, no grand reveal?
"Oh, don't worry. Holmes is about to put on a show."
All right, Jordan, I've got to know. What's Holmes planning?
"Oh, he's setting the stage for something big." The next day, he invites Windybank back to Baker Street. But this time, there's no small talk, no polite introductions. The moment Windybank steps inside, Holmes leans forward and says, "Shall I tell you what happened to Hosmer Angel?"
And Windybank? Does he panic or does he try to play it cool?
He tries to act unfazed, smirks a little, but Holmes isn't buying it. He lays it all out. The handwriting on the letters, the strange secrecy, the stepfather conveniently out of town whenever Hosmer appeared. It all leads back to one person.
Let me guess, Windybank himself.
Bingo. And Holmes doesn't stop there. He reaches for the letter Windybank wrote the day before and holds it up. This, he says, is the same handwriting as Hosmer Angel's.
That's it, that's checkmate.
Windybank tries to protest, but Holmes doesn't let him. "You, sir, posed as Hosmer Angel," he declares. "You deceived Mary Sutherland. You manipulated her, knowing she would never suspect her own stepfather."
That's sick. He pretended to be another man just to stop her from marrying?
That's exactly what he did. It was never about love. It was about control. Windybank knew that if Mary married, he and his wife would lose access to her inheritance. So, he created a fake suitor, built up her trust, and then made him disappear.
That's beyond cruel. She was heartbroken over a man who didn't even exist.
And Holmes makes sure Windybank knows it. He stands up, eyes locked on him, and says, "Your crime is not one the law can punish, but it is despicable nonetheless."
And Windybank? What does he do? Run, beg?
Neither. He actually tries to justify himself. "It was just a joke," he stammers, "a harmless deception."
Harmless? He destroyed that woman's faith in love.
Exactly. And Holmes isn't amused. He steps forward, his voice icy. "If you were to do this again," he warns, "I might just take justice into my own hands."
Oh, I bet that wiped the smirk off his face.
Oh, it did. Windybank turns pale, mumbles some excuse, and bolts for the door.
And Mary? Does Holmes tell her?
No. He decides she's better off not knowing. He simply tells her that Hosmer Angel is gone and won't return.
That's rough. She'll spend the rest of her life wondering what really happened.
And that's the tragedy of it. Not all of Holmes's cases end with justice. Sometimes the truth is just too cruel. And that, my friends, is the unsettling truth behind Hosmer Angel. A deception so calculated, yet so personal, designed to trap Mary in a life she never chose. This case isn't just about a missing fiancé, it's about control, manipulation, and how emotions can blind us to the truth, staring us in the face. And that's what makes Sherlock Holmes so brilliant. Where others see confusion, he sees clarity. But here's the real question. How often do we ignore the red flags in our own lives? How often do we believe what we want to be true, rather than what is true? Let me know in the comments. What do you think was the most chilling part of this case? And do you think Mary ever truly moved on from the lie? And if you thought this case was unsettling, trust me, Holmes has plenty more mysteries that will leave you questioning everything. So don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for the next case. Because with Sherlock Holmes, the truth is never what it seems.
Subscribe for more content.